Hey everyone, I just picked up this Innocn 32M2V and there are not a lot of reviews out there, so I figured I would give my thoughts on it. I'm a photographer and videographer, so naturally I spend a lot of my time doing photo and video editing. I've been on the lookout for a monitor with these exact specifications: 32-inch, 4K, HDR, and this is kind of the only one that I've really found that even exists and is available. So I picked it up after a couple of the early reviews were pretty positive, and I love it. I think it's a phenomenal monitor. As you can see from this comparison between the LG C1 Oled, it's a 48-inch screen, to the 32-inch Innocn, the HDR viewing experience is remarkably similar. I was actually blown away at how close the image was to the LG. The blacks are almost as deep. I would say they look as deep to me. I think that the Innocn even has an advantage in a room with some sort of lighting. I had all the lights off for this test, but there was a little bit of window light, and at times you can see a reflection in the LG, which does lift the black level a little bit, I think. Whereas the Innocn, the reflections are so well controlled that the blacks may even look a little bit deeper. And in some scenes, the camera, which was on a tripod, can be seen reflected in the LG, but you can't see any reflections at all in the Innocn. So they did a great job controlling the reflections with that, which really goes a long way to enhance the black levels in a fairly dim room, but it's not completely dark. I mainly use the monitor for photo and video editing, so gaming I'm not going to touch on at all. I never play games on my computer. I'm running this on a Mac Studio with the M1 Ultra chip, running it through one of the Thunderbolt ports into the display port on the monitor. I've also tried the USB-C to USB-C connection, which also works fine. I'm getting a faster refresh rate from the display port at 144 Hertz versus when I connected it via the USB, it was 120 Hertz. That doesn't really make a big difference to me, but since I already had the display port to USB-C cable lying around, I just figured I'd use that. As far as looks go, I think the monitor looks fine. The silver bezel matches my Mac Studio, which I don't care about at all. I do like the thin bezels. I don't care about how the back of the monitor looks because I will never see it again after unboxing it. The screen itself is gorgeous, and overall I think the monitor looks great on my desk. I wish it was black, but again, not a big deal, and it does match my Mac Studio, so it creates a pleasant viewing experience on my desk. I have the monitor mounted on an arm which is attached to the back of my desk, so I did not even use the stand that came with it. I didn't even take it out of the box, so I can't comment on that. But it works great with my VESA mount. I think it's a VESA 100, and looks great. Mounts great. It's not too heavy, so it works great with the monitor arm I got off of Amazon. After setting the monitor up and connecting it to the computer, the first thing I noticed is that the colors are very magenta right out of the box. Very warm, very magenta. Definitely new for editing. I would have to recalibrate it. First thing I did is in SDR mode with local dimming off, I calibrated it with the Spider X-Rite Spider 1 Pro or whatever they call it these days, and that did a great job of creating a color profile for the SDR mode. It would not work in HDR mode. I think the profile it puts out is like a Rec 709, so whenever I would use the profile in HDR mode, it just would clip the highlights. So there's not a lot out there on how to calibrate a monitor at home for HDR, so still waiting on maybe some tools might come out for that. But at least for now I can color critically edit in SDR my photos and videos, no problem. The gamut is wide and gorgeous. So the way I have it set up is on the monitor, I have HDR on. I have it set to the P3 color gamut because that's usually where I'm working with my videos. And then I toggle the HDR in the operating system of macOS, which is super easy. One click. I do revert back to the standard color profile, not on the OSD of the monitor, but the color profile within the macOS for HDR, because the one I created does not work in HDR mode. So I just have to keep in mind, if I am editing an HDR video, which this is, by the way, I will upload it to YouTube in HDR. I have to keep in mind that the magenta shift on the screen is there, and I'll just have to kind of mentally work around that. So it's not a perfect workaround, but at least I can view and edit in HDR when I want to. And it's going to be really cool in the future as more and more editing programs are allowing for true HDR photo editing too. Adobe Camera Raw has it now, so that's something that I'm excited to use in the future. As far as local dimming goes, I have it set to off for SDR, and then when I toggle on the HDR in macOS, it will kick in the local dimming. So that is a perfect solution for me. I found that local dimming in SDR is great for content consumption, watching YouTube videos, movies, whatever I'm doing, even browsing the web. The local dimming looks good in SDR, but for photo editing, I feel like it may not give me an accurate representation of what's actually happening. So I disable it for that. I also find that it kind of dulls highlights a little bit in SDR, but as far as the on-screen experience in macOS, it looks fine. Like all the icons and text, everything looks just fine. One issue I've found is that I'm running into HDCP issues when trying to view any kind of streaming service, Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max. No matter what cable I hook up to the monitor, it won't let me watch the content. It'll just stream a black screen. And this may be a Mac OS thing. It may be a cable thing. Even though I've used many different cables, it doesn't seem to make a difference. It may be something in the firmware of the monitor. I have not found a workaround yet. But luckily for me, I don't really do that kind of consumption on this screen. I do have the LG right above it, so if I want to watch a movie or stream something while I'm working, I just throw it up on the LG C1 Oled and I'm good to go. So this doesn't really be a problem for me. It's just something that I'm kind of head scratching as to what the issue is. I have not had any other issues with the monitor as far as any quirks or anything. It wakes up immediately when I toggle the mouse after it goes to sleep. I haven't had any other errors or any kind of weird issues that some people are talking about with Windows. So for me, everything's been working just fine. The only thing I wish was better would be the out-of-box color accuracy. I also want to note that the viewing angles are not very good, especially in HDR mode. Again, for me, not a problem. I'm sitting at the computer, staring at it straight on. I'm very rarely, and if ever, looking at it from a side angle. But that is something to note if you are planning on using this to view with other people. It really shines from straight on viewing, but the views from the side angles are really bad. You'll see a lot of blooming. Talking about blooming, it is extremely well controlled in every viewing scenario that I have come across. Even a mouse over a black screen from straight on, the blooming is not distracting at all. If you really look close, you might see the zones popping on and off, but they did a phenomenal job controlling the blooming. One observation I had comparing the brightness levels between the LG and the Innocn is that when there is a large bright object on the screen, the Innocn gets remarkably brighter than the LG. But if it's a mostly dark screen with a very small bright object, the LG seems to show those tiny highlights brighter than the Innocn does. Probably because of the LG's pixel level dimming, they're able to crank up the brightness in very small things, but the overall, if there's a bright large object or the overall image is very bright on a large portion of the screen, the Innocn gets substantially brighter than the LG, which looks absolutely stunning in HDR. Overall, I highly recommend this monitor. There's not much else like it on the market. 4K, 32 inches, HDR, mini LED. This is pretty much all you've got. So I highly recommend it. I think the image quality is beautiful. I wish the out-of-the-box color accuracy was better, but for content creators, photographers, videographers, this is a great option, especially if you want to have that ability to edit HDR videos without spending a lot more money. So for the price, you can't beat it. Great quality, highly recommended.